Hello. Do you know who I am? I sure hope you do. My name is Profe Kyle, and I'm an English teacher for Latin Americans that speak Spanish. And I've been doing that for the past 5 years. And today, I'm going to be talking about my first trip to Mexico. Now, if you didn't see my last video where I talked about my first time ever in Latin America, you can watch it right here. I talked about my trip to Margarita Island in Venezuela when I was 14 years old. The trip that I'm going to talk about today, I made it when I was, I think, 20 years old. I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure I was 20 years old. In between these two trips to Margarita Island and to Mexico, I did visit Cuba and the Dominican Republic, but I don't really want to make videos about that because they would be super short. And I just don't really have much to say. One thing that maybe you don't like, but just the truth, is from the gringo Canadian American perspective, and yes, for Canadians, we call our southern brothers Americans, not because we don't know that there are other people who live on the American continent. It's just what we call them Americans. Yeah, from our perspective, if you go to Colombia, the Dominican Republic, Mexico, wherever, it kind of all just starts to look the same, especially if you're only going to resorts. So Cuba seemed communist. Dominican Republic went to Puerto Plata, and it seemed kind of like a tropical jungle, and there were more mulattoes and Haitians, so black people. And where I'm from in Alberta, of course, there's not that many black people. I think at that point in my life, when I went to the Dominican Republic, I'd only met one other black guy in my life. So going to the Dominican Republic was a bit of a shock for me at first because I'd never seen black people or mulattoes before. But anyways, I don't really, just besides those comments, I don't really have anything else I want to say about Cuba or the Dominican Republic. But my first trip to Mexico was very interesting. I'm going to talk about that. There are English subtitles here. This is a listening practice for you. So if you're trying to improve your English, turn on the English subtitles. And the first comment in the comments section, I have some questions about what I'm going to talk about. So if you want to do some English homework, you can try to answer the questions below in the comments section. But of course, wait till after the video. But you can look at them right now if you want to know what you need to answer. So let's get started. My first trip to Mexico. I was about 20 years old at this time. Why was I going to Mexico? Well, I talk about this quite a bit. The reason that I learned Spanish was because I met a Mexican girl. Her name was Diana. I met her like my second month of university, and just she had a very infectious Latina energy that I loved. And I was a very shy young man at the time, and I somehow found the courage to ask her to be my girlfriend after going out with her a few times. So yeah, for 3 years, we were boyfriend and girlfriend. And I think after our first year, her family of course, they invited their children back to Mexico City, where they're originally from, and they invited me to go with them as well. So I guess I must have been a special guy to Diana and her family because they invited me to go visit them in Mexico. And I was really excited about this for many reasons. Of course, just I like to travel, and when I travel, I like to. It's not really. I don't really like to see buildings and tourist places. I prefer to know how the people live. So for me, it was really exciting. I was gonna see where my girlfriend at the time, where she grew up in a completely different culture, and experience it. So I was obviously very excited for that. Uh, I was only 20 years old at the time. I had traveled a little bit, but I was still getting used to freedom, and it just seemed so cool that I was going to be traveling to another culture, to another, not culture, to another country to, with my girlfriend to experience her culture. I felt my ego was boosted. I felt so important and so cool that I was doing this. So I was really excited about this trip. I don't remember exactly when I made this trip. I think it might have been like during spring break. I really can't remember. So we went to Mexico. I think it was a 1 week trip. It was just 1 week because I think it was during spring break, so I only had 1 week off from university. And we traveled to Mexico City. So my ex-girlfriend Diana, she was from Mexico City. I don't want to give too many details because according to Latinos, that's very dangerous. But I will say this: her father worked in a private bank in Mexico. Uh, I don't think he was like the most important person in the bank, but he had a very important job in the bank. So he was definitely in the upper middle class or the upper class in Mexico. I think upper class, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. So we flew to Mexico to the airport. I think it's like Benito Juarez International Airport. Parents picked me up. I think the first thing I noticed when I arrived in Mexico City, I think we arrived at nighttime, was just Mexico City is one of the biggest cities in the world. Like, that's not just a personal opinion, it's just facts. Mexico City is one of the biggest cities in the world. I think it has around 24 million, 26 million people. It is huge. And when you fly into Mexico City at night, you don't know where the city ends. And even when you fly in or fly out of Mexico City during the day, you don't know when the city ends. The city is enormous, and the Mexicans like to call Mexico City the monster. Yeah, because it just seems to eat everything. It's huge. So that was obviously the first thing I noticed. Uh, and again, it's just when you go to Latin America as a gringo, you just know you're in Latin America. Just the airports seem different. Like I think the biggest thing that you notice a lot when you fly from North America to Latin America, of course, Mexico, for many Latinos, they tell me, well, Mexico is part of North America. Okay, yes, it is. So when I say North America, I don't know what I should call it. Canada, the United States, a short name for it. I don't think it exists. That's why I say Gringolandia, just to give it a name. So for coming from Gringolandia going to Latin America, the big thing you notice is just the customer service isn't as good. Like in Gringolandia, the people at the airports, like they're paid to try to give good customer service. And I guess I'm not too sure why. Again, you guys can tell me down below, but I think the people at the airports aren't paid that much or they don't care about their jobs as much. I'm not completely sure. Maybe it's because they have powerful public unions and it's impossible for the airports to fire people. I'm not too sure, but usually the first thing you notice is just all the people working at the airport like, they all seem like really depressed. And whereas like in Canada, they're paid and forced to have a smile at all times. Like, oh, how are you? Nice to see you. So I think that was the first thing I noticed. Uh, getting a taxi was strange. I think there was people yelling at us, like in most parts of Latin America. So we drove from the airport to her house, and just again, I was to her parents' house, and Mexico City was huge. And again, her father was upper class or upper middle class, and like after being in Cuba and Venezuela and the Dominican Republic, you're so used to the resorts and of course like the poor shanty towns of the countries. So this was the first time where I saw the nice parts of Latin America, the rich parts of Latin America, and like, it was just it's crazy how beautiful the beautiful parts of Latin America are that the rich people have available to them, and then how ugly, that's the fact, is just how ugly the poorer parts of Latin America are and can be. And for me, I'm from just a normal middle class family in Gringolandia. Like we have a nice house, it's big, We have a big piece of land, but you know, it's nothing really luxurious. But like for them, well, at least from my perspective, it was quite luxurious, their house and where they lived. They lived in a gated community. So again, I think these do exist in Gringolandia, but I had never seen one in my province, my part of Canada before. So you drive into it, there's a guard, and the guard like opens up the gate. There's guards 24/7, and like there's high walls protecting uh, all these houses. Their house wasn't really big, it's just, but yeah, it did seem luxurious. Just the cars seemed luxurious, the houses seemed luxurious, the guards seemed luxurious, the walls seemed luxurious, the neighborhood seemed luxurious. Just everything seemed so luxurious. And then you walk into the house and just everything is big open spaces, that traditional, I guess, Mexican architecture with the big open spaces, very airy feeling. And again, it's the whole time is like, wow, 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 whoa, whoa. And again, upper class Latino family. They had, I think for you guys, you call them ayuda, help. So there was like a maid at the house when I went there. I've never had a maid before. I've never seen a maid before. I always just thought it was something I saw in the movies, just something people in Hollywood had, but they had them in Latin America. It's like, whoa, you're a maid? Like you're paid to just come here and clean the house? Whoa, that's so crazy. That's what you do? Oh, like I didn't say that to her, but in my mind, that was what I was thinking. Was, oh, I've always had to clean everything myself. It just seems so strange and cool that somebody did all that work for them. I think she cooked for them as well too. Just yeah, just I was shocked. I was shocked. Okay, let's keep on going. So that was my first impressions of just this upper middle class, upper class way of living in Latin America, in Mexico. And we had 1 week. So the plan was the first few days just to check out Mexico City. We went and saw the downtown of Mexico City, which has the ancient Aztec pyramids or the ruins and the museum for the Aztecs. I've always been interested in Aztec and Mayan culture and the architecture. So for me, it was cool to be able to see that. Uh, and we also went to the Palacio de Bellos Artes, and that was interesting. It was interesting to find out that Mexico City was built on, I don't know what the term is because I'm not a geologist, but just on very unstable ground. So the Palacio de Bellos Artes is slowly sinking, more or less, in Mexico City, which was really interesting. So yeah, it was cool to see Mexico City again. My ex-girlfriend's family, they were wealthy for Mexican standards, so we went to some fancy restaurants. Went to a fancy steak restaurant. Went to a fancy Chinese Mexican fusion restaurant. Like I ate incredibly during my stay in Mexico City. And what else did we do? Oh, I lost my train of thought. So we did that. Uh, but I think the biggest thing is that I noticed again was just like the maid. And then when we went to park in the city, like there was a poor man, like with a towel, like oh yeah, duh, 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 duh. And then after you parked, you were expected to pay the man for helping you park, and they would just stay on that street the entire day, making sure that nobody stole the people's vehicles. Like that was just doesn't exist in Canada. That just doesn't exist at all. So it was shocking, and I think maybe the biggest culture shock for me was, besides all of that, the biggest culture shock was how brown the people were. Now, maybe like, what did you say, Profe Cal? But the stereotype that most gringos have of Mexico and most of Latin America, kind of like Sofia Vergara, Salma Hayek, like the trigueño skin, the black hair. That's kind of like the stereotype. Like Enrique Iglesias, he's Spanish, but even for us, like Enrique Iglesias, Shakira, Sofia Vergara, Salma Hayek, like that is our stereotype. That is what we have in our mind when it comes to Latinos. So when I thought of Mexico too, like that's what I was thinking. And my ex-girlfriend, she showed me before the trip I'd seen some Mexican telenovelas, so I seen all these Mexican actors, and I just expected to see a whole bunch of Trigueños walking down the street. But the fact of the matter was that most of the people in Mexico City, and maybe even Mexico as a whole, at least in that center southern part of Mexico, are indigenous, and they were like all these short indigenous brown people in Mexico, and I was just, where do these people come from? I've never seen them, and I hadn't seen them in any of the music videos and none of the telenovelas. I had never seen these people. It's the shock to me, like, so the majority of the people in Mexico look like this, but they're never on television, and it just didn't really make sense to me. And in Gringolandia, especially right now, there's lots of talks about minority representation, and maybe something needs to happen about this. And for the most part, I think we do a pretty good job. But like, for me in Mexico, like, they do a horrible job because the majority of the Mexicans look like that, and almost none of them were on television. I just kind of blew my mind how these people were just not represented by the media, by the news, by the people who control the Mexican society. So that was just a huge culture shock for me, for sure. So that was my experience in Mexico City. Afterwards, we took a trip north to San Miguel de Allende, to Guanajuato, and to León. San Miguel de Allende is very famous for many retired gringos because that's where many retired gringos buy houses in San Miguel de Allende. And yeah, it's a very rustic, old, traditional style pueblo, Mexican pueblo. I believe in Mexico they call them like pueblos mágicos. So it's one of the most famous pueblos mágicos in Mexico. So yeah, it was cool to go there. We went to a hotel, and it was kind of like a fancy hotel, but we were like it's like an hacienda hotel, but we were like the only ones there, which again seems strange to me that they had this hotel and we were the only guests. And we went to the restaurant, and again we were the only guests. So the food was incredible and the service was good, but I'd never been to a hotel where we were the only guests. I guess in a way what I'm describing with all of this is just that realismo mágico. Yeah, just sometimes you read Latin American literature, it's like, this makes no sense. But then you go to Latin America, and that's kind of what you say is, yeah, none of this really makes sense. Like, how does any of this work? So yeah, in the hotel, just like, where is everybody? Like, aren't there supposed to be guests? Like, how can you have a hotel and make money if you have no guests? Just nothing really made sense. And then we went to Guanajuato. Guanajuato is very famous for just its beauty. It's a beautiful city. There's lots of underground tunnels because of the mining that happened there. So it was really cool to see that. I saw the famous mummies of Guanajuato. It's cool to see that. And then again, like, the family was a little bit wealthy, so we stayed at this fancy castle hotel in Guanajuato. Again, I'm from a middle class family in Canada. I was not used to that kind of luxury, and yeah, it's just the whole time I was just kind of like pinching myself, like, what am I living right now? This is just so crazy. So yeah, Guanajuato is incredible for the culture, for the city. I would definitely recommend anybody go visit Guanajuato. It's just an incredible, beautiful city. I would definitely like to visit it again. After Guanajuato, we went to León. León, not really a beautiful city. I've heard that has beautiful women, but I haven't been there again to see if it's true. But León is most famous for its leather goods, especially its shoes. So I think that was the main reason for the family going there, was just to go shopping. And actually, one of the best pair of shoes I ever bought was from León. And oh, I love those shoes. Yeah, León, not a pretty city, but if you're looking for shoes or belt buckles or leather goods, definitely go to León. They have incredible shoes and leather goods. And yeah, so we took a road trip driving. It seemed like that part of Mexico at that time was safe enough to be driving in. So we drove from Mexico City all the way to León through San Miguel de Allende and Guanajuato. Then we went back to Mexico City, and then I flew back to Vancouver, where I was studying at university with my ex-girlfriend. So that was my first trip to Mexico. It was definitely a huge culture shock. It definitely gave me more interest in Mexican culture as well as Latino culture in general. Just it's been 9 years learning Spanish and learning about Latinos, and I'm confused. It still doesn't really make sense to me how Latin America works. It just I always ask you guys questions, and even you guys don't really know. It just Latin America is a very fascinating and strange part of the world, and I don't know if I'll ever completely understand it. I don't really want to talk too much longer. That was my first trip in Mexico. So if you want to try to test your English, there's some questions down below in the comments section. If you have comments about something I said, you can definitely let me know down in the comments. And that's it for now. Hopefully you enjoyed me talking in English about my first experience in Mexico. So thank you for staying around to listen to me, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.